Hello, hello. This is Diann. This is Diann from In the Know Podcasting Show. I'm podcasting from Amelia Island, Florida on the 9th of December. It's 11 a.m. on a Sunday morning. It's overcast and rainy, a perfect day for reading. A perfect day for reading. That's what I'm going to do today for you. I'm going to read to you an excerpt from my book. The book I am talking about is the nonfiction book, The Essential Guide to a Life of Travel, the ABCs of International Travel. I was encouraged to write this book by all kinds of people that I met as I've been traveling for 3 years, 5 continents, 40 countries, and especially from John and Ann, who I met in St. Petersburg, Florida in October of 2015, and they said to me, "We are British and we live in Spain. Come visit." I said, "Give me your name and telephone number and address. I will be there." So 4 or 5 months later, I was visiting John and Ann. I've kept up with them for the past 3 years. John and Ann insisted that I write this book. They said, "You have so many stories to tell and you have so much information. It's important that you write this book." It includes 12 vignettes. And those vignettes, I'm going to read one of those vignettes, but before I do, I want to tell you briefly the table of contents of this Essential Guide to a Life of Travel. There are about 13 chapters, including information on transportation, lodging, insurance. Boy, do I have a story about that. That's another podcast. Passports and visas, banking, debit cards, and frequent flyer credit cards, how you communicate and how you manage with your phone, travel apps, my favorite travel apps, safety issues, how to be safe, how to have a healthy travel, exercise apps, and then travel insurance and your luggage, thinking information about packing, multiple destination trip planning, and then some odds and ends like immunizations, international driving permits, rental car insurance. Then I have a pre-planning checklist, all the information, everything that you need to do, putting it all together before you start on your international trip. And as I said before, I have excerpts. Now, the excerpts, I think, are wonderful, of course. I think the whole book is pretty good, but it's wonderful because that sort of breaks up and adds a personal touch. The excerpts are the good and the bad and the not so good experience that I've had traveling. Now it's been 3 years solo traveling over 3 countries. 3 years, 40 countries, 5 continents. The book can be purchased on Amazon if you go to my Facebook page or the links described in this podcast. If you go to my Facebook page, Diann Schindler Author, scroll down to a picture of this book, you can go to the link to Amazon and purchase. You can purchase paperback or ebook. You can find the book at Story and Song Bookstore in Amelia and Phoenix and Dragon Bookstore in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, that's enough, isn't it? That's enough of commercial. Let me get right to this chapter, this vignette. And this is a story, is an experience that I wrote about that I had in Prague. And this was just 8 months after I began traveling. So this is about Prague. I traveled for over 4 hours by train from Vienna, Austria, to Prague. Boy, I needed the rest. After all, I had wandered the streets of Vienna looking for live music and longing for fabulous architecture. And yes, the Vienna music and architecture were beautiful, but personally, the design in Spain and Portugal is exquisite. And more my cup of tea. But I was thinking to myself, could it be that I'm already satiated with the astonishing sights, sounds, and smells and tastes of just 8 months abroad? Gosh, I hope not. Please, I said, as I prayed to Desna, the goddess of travel and journey, say it isn't so. Say am no longer, say I'm not satiated with this just 8 months traveling the world. I arrived at the busiest train station in all of the Czech Republic, and I walked for 30 minutes over the Lisbon-like pavement to my Airbnb apartment. And I'm telling you, it wasn't easy. The wheels of my suitcase jammed into the pavement every few feet, causing me to stop, turn, and adjust before beginning again. It was exhausting. Finally, I reached my destination, and my non-English speaking host, the tall and beautiful Marketa, greeted me with fantastic exuberance. Her bright blue eyes lit up even brighter when she saw my guitar. She spoke Czech interspersed with English and asked me to play something. Well, if you know me at all, I'm always ready to play and sing. So I was happy to oblige, and I played Blackbird by the Beatles while she used her cell phone to videotape me. When I finished, we sat at the table for some wine and cheese and managed to have a conversation. I learned that this beautiful 50-ish blonde woman had 3 daughters in their 20s, 2 granddaughters, and had been married for over 37 years when her husband left her for a 20-something woman just 5 months ago. I could feel her sadness. And when I touched her hand, she seemed to be more willing to let down her guard. Her pain was unmistakable. I was reminded women are women all over the world. Yeah, women are women everywhere. We sat in silence, I think, for a full 5 minutes. Then we finished our wine and cried together for a few minutes longer. Finally, we hugged and promised to stay in touch as she walked out the door. Well, thanks to my prayers to Desna, the next 4 days were filled with typical mouth-gaping tourist-like awe. I let loose, oohing and awing, craning my already painful neck, tripping over lava stone slabs, mesmerized by it all. The Charles Bridge, with its 30 statues and statuaries, the Vltava River, the longest in the country at 270 miles, was incredible. And still, it was still, with lovely swans skimming along the top of the water. I was just thinking how romantic this was. I saw astonishing castles and palaces, gold-tipped towers and cathedrals, and sculptures crowning everything, everywhere. For the last 1,000 years, the city of 100 bridges has been the shining example of Romanesque, Gothic, Renaissance, and Baroque architecture. And the music, the live music, from jazz to folk to classical. Live music is found everywhere, on the streets, on the bridges, in the churches, in the pubs, and in the restaurants. Happily, getting around town was uncomplicated. You can get around town with the metro, the tram, the bus, the taxi, rented bicycles and segways, motorcycles, scooters, self-pedaled and electric skateboards, and of course, you can walk on your own power. The food in Czech is mostly pork or beef with a sauce and a side dish of dumplings made from wheat or potato flour boiled in water as a roll and then sliced and served hot. And beer, beer, beer everywhere. The house wine, my favorite beverage of choice, was excellent and sells for as little as 80 cents a glass. And ice cream, lots of ice cream everywhere, served in warm, sugar-coated, freshly baked cones. How could I resist? Well, I couldn't. And I met an older gentleman as we were staring over the bridge and watching those swans. I met this older gentleman from Egypt. And he and I together indulged in this lovely ice cream on more than one occasion. Wow, thank you, Desna, O goddess of travel and journey. Thank you so much for not deserting me. That's an excerpt from my book. It follows chapter 8. It's on page about 93. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you comment at the bottom of this podcast. There's a room to comment. Please email me at Diann@diannabroad.com and tell me what you think of this podcast, what you think of my show In the Know. What kinds of things would you like for me to talk about on my show? And be sure to tell your friends about it and your family, I hope. This is Diann from In the Know at diannabroad.com. Signing off. I hope you enjoy. See you next time on the podcast In the Know.